All right, welcome my Nomads to the Nomad Bitcast. I'm here with Zach Lil Payton. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? Again.
yeah, yeah, had a little technical difficulties with our last podcast. It's just lost in the digital space, so got to come here and rehash what we talked about last week.
Yeah, well, something about the 2.0s always seems to be a little better.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I just want to get into it. We definitely wanted to talk about the Snyder Cut,
Yeah.
the beautiful Snyder Cut. So I know you've watched it. Have you seen it more than once or just once?
I've just seen it once because I got stuck with Kong versus Godzilla and Mortal Kombat.
Yes, same. So I've seen it like 1.5 times. I'm currently
It's 4 hours
rewatching it.
long.
Yeah. I'm currently rewatching it, and like you said, a lot of stuff came out since then. But I definitely want to get into the fact that with the Snyder Cut, I was actually able to follow this whole Justice League thing. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like with the Whedon cut, it was kind of all over the place, and it was kind of strange to me. I know for me, what stood out the most is that in the Snyder cut, characters were acting like their characters, whereas the
Mm-hmm.
Whedon cut, it was kind of like they were just joking around and not really acting like. In the Whedon cut, Batman had the most jokes out of anybody. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
strange to me. Like, what do you think on that?
Yeah. No, I mean it's kind of like, he's taking the cue from the whole Avengers thing. But the problem is with that, with the Avengers, the characters were already fleshed out with their own movies at that point.
Yes.
Before Justice League, you didn't have Aquaman before then. Aquaman came after, right? So
Mm.
like a lot of these, and then you had to introduce the Flash and Cyborg, and like a lot of these characters at this point you're introducing for the first time. So I feel like it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to start just where did all this rapport come from with these characters with each other? Like they're joking around, they barely even know each other, and they're talking like they've known each other for like 10 years, and at least with the Snyder cut, you see that, they went through a lot of hell just to revive Superman as an example, and it's like, and then you look at the original take on it, it's like, you think it's just pretty cut and dry, right? Like they do this, bam, bam, and that's it.
Yeah. Like in the Snyder cut, reviving Superman is a whole sequence of itself. I think it's even a separate chapter where they gotta
Yeah.
like sneak in the facility and they gotta
Nope.
make sure all the humans, like everybody, gets out of the facility. Then they gotta go and uh, make sure he hits the water. And the most important part of that is we get to see Flash's ability to actually like manipulate time. Like he's
Which is
already
great.
there.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is really cool because the fact that they even showed the Flash having the ability to manipulate time is like opening it up to the multiverse with that, because as you know, in like comic books and and everything, once he starts doing that, things start happening, kind of like the butterfly effect, like it creates rifts.
Yeah.
So I like that opening, like you already know that's where he's going with it, you know what I mean, which
Mhm.
is really awesome. And it's like, you see the original, like there was none of that. So if you see another Justice League movie, you have no pretense for anything, right? If
Right.
they went with the original way that it was originally done, then it's like you see another one, you're like confused.
Yeah. Yeah. Like definitely, you get to see that scene where he actually misses the cube when it hits the water, so time starts to reverse, and he touches it right in time. But it kind of sets up for how the ending comes, where they
Yeah.
actually lose. Like, they don't save the day. They lose, and it's Flash who comes out on top. He's like, "Look, you got to do it again. Got to break the rule." And I was like, "Wow, that was awesome." That whole sequence was pretty amazing. That whole
Right.
sequence.
Well, no, I mean, as you know, I mean, Snyder has this whole storyboard already made up for like 5 years worth of material, so you could probably have an idea that because of this, he wants to go in this direction. And since it's a multiverse thing, you can kind of cheat and do what you want that's kind of like off script. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because that's a whole nother reality at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I like the fact that Snyder took the time to go into each. I like how he broke it into chapters because it went into Fisher's character, because at first it's like there was nothing about Cyborg really at all. You know what I mean? Like there was no dynamic between him and his dad,
Right.
or what caused him to get like that to begin with. Like they talk about it, but it's not really like hitting home really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in the
And he
Whedon
has to deal
cut,
with that.
his mother's not even there in the Whedon cut.
No, zero, none. And it's like, look, this kid's just a teenager, you
Yeah.
know, and he has to have his whole body pretty much put back together, and he
Yes.
has to deal with that. And it shows the fact that he's a teenager and he's got to deal with this very traumatic thing, and he's trying to deal with that at the same time while being a hero. Like that's such a underrated thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we talked about that last time where it's like every movie needs the character that the audience could go on the journey with to immerse them in this new world. With Star Wars, it was Luke Skywalker. With X-Men, it was Wolverine.
Right,
So that was Cyborg. Like his whole character, you go through this journey, you see his trauma and everything like that. But in the Whedon cut, where that's cut out, there's no heart in that cut, and you could feel it. It's kind of hollow. Everybody's just like a caricature of themselves. There's nothing really to stick on to. But with the Snyder
right,
Cut, you can stick on to it because you see that he's in pain. You
right,
see what he's going through with his pops. You see what he's going through. He just lost his mother. Like you said, he had to have his body rebuilt. And it wasn't his choice. Like the mother box just latched onto him and it looked pretty painful. And he's going through that. So he
right.
could never have a normal life. Can you imagine being a teenager, thinking you're going to go to college, and then turns out you had this accident, your whole body, you look like a Frankenstein monster. You have
Yeah,
to deal with that. And
no,
now,
exactly.
on top of that, you got to save the world.
Yeah, that's a lot to go through. And the original version had no, like, superhero movies on its quintessential level is the hero's journey, right? There's
Right.
there's something, but when you have the cut version of that, it's like there's none of that. There's holes.
Yes.
There's like, okay, so we don't even have a beginning part. We're just going to introduce him, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about this kind of stuff before, where like Warner Brothers like assumes that everyone that's going to see these movies have read the comic books and understand who these characters are. And that's a good thing with Marvel, because they don't care if you know that stuff. Like it's obviously that's part of the fan base, right? But they see these movies and people, I mean, the Avengers made $2 billion in the last movie, not because not everyone knows the background stories of these characters because of the comic books, but because of the other movies. The other movies is the ones that brought that out.
Right.
So you're able to attract people who never really were interested in the characters in the comic book level anyway. But DC is like assuming that, well, everyone knows who Batman is, everyone knows, but not everyone knows who Cyborg is, or the
No.
background of the Flash, or any of these things, right? Like,
No.
and they're so different than what's on TV, because the Flash on the show is different from the movie, that
100%.
you can't really assume any of that stuff. I had this joke told to me a long time ago. So, and I compare it to this. So there is this Dutch man hiding. So he goes. There's this Dutch man. He goes to church. He goes to his father. He's like, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned." Father's like, "All right, tell me your transgressions, child." Dutchman responds, he's like, "I'm hiding a Jewish man in the attic against the Nazis, so he doesn't get captured." And then the father responds, is like, "I don't understand. Why are you confessing something? You're protecting one of God's children." He's like, "Forgive me, Father, I forgot to mention this. I'm charging this man 5 shillings a week so I can hide him in my attic so he doesn't get caught." And the father's like, "Okay, I don't understand. I could see why that would be a transgression, but it's not. You're still protecting one of God's children. Say your Hail Marys and move on." And then the Dutchman's, "Forgive me, Father, I forgot to mention this. Is it wrong to tell him that the war's over?" And I compared this because I feel like fans are kind of like the Jewish person just waiting in the attic and this Warner Brothers is the Dutch guy, and then they finally kind of come out, and then they confess everything, and we're kind of held at ransom. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right,
And it's like
right.
the punchline's like, so should we tell them the war's over? You know what I mean? Like it's the same kind of thing. Like, are we actually going to have something good where we can actually latch onto? Because we've had Wonder Woman, and that's it. And that was the first one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So at this point
yeah,
now, you have to have a movie that's not even on script, that wasn't even officially released, to actually have something to latch onto. And then they say later on that, well, he's not going to make any more movies, so that's it. I was like, then what was the point? You dropped 50 extra $1 million just for this, and it makes no sense, you know? And it's like, and that's why it's like, that's why I was like, that's why I feel like for us, we're that poor dude hiding in the attics, because it's really it's like, when are we actually going to, because we pay them money, right? It's the same thing. We pay them money, they charge us, and it's not until after we're like, well, I'm sorry, we messed up, and that's it. Even though you've spent how much time and money and effort and all this stuff.
right, right. I mean, yeah, I totally agree with that story because what DC's doing is like reactionary filmmaking, which doesn't ever work. They're like, oh, let's just throw like a couple things at the wall, see what sticks. Oh, you like Harley Quinn? Let's do a Harley Quinn led movie. Oh, that didn't do well, so we're gonna cut all her sequel movies. Oh, you like this, so we're gonna do a whole bunch of movies for this. Or, oh, you don't like that. I mean, where's that Batwoman movie that we're supposed to get? Where's that? That wasn't
Don't
on the
even.
slate that they released. So it's like they're just doing all this reactionary filmmaking, and it doesn't work. It muddles their whole plan, their whole overarching plan. Now they're like, oh, there's another Batman out there. Oh no, we're getting rid of Ben Affleck's Batman. Oh no, you know what? We're gonna keep his Batman. We're gonna have two different Batmen. One's on Earth 1, one's on Earth 2. Next thing you know, there's gonna be three Batman. Oh, they're all the same one. Next thing, I'm like, come on, man. Like this is ridiculous. It's like nails on a chalkboard trying to keep up with this stuff.
And
And
it's a shame, because the fact that they have some really good casting with the Snyder cut with J.K.
yes,
Simmons as commissioner, it's like you can't just throw that stuff out. Like, what you have involved in that is so good.
yes,
And even though you have the fact that, Martian Manhunter was in there literally for 2.5 minutes tops, and they're treating him like a deity almost, where he's like kind of like doing his own thing. He's like, I won't get involved until now, but it goes to show that he thinks he's that strong that if he intervenes, it's not fair for the other side anymore. You
which
know what I
is
mean?
ridiculous. Like this dude, like yo, the world was literally ended. Like there was this dude literally sat back, and then after all that fighting, after all that turmoil, he comes back. He's like, you know what? Next time, I got you, man. And it's like, really? Like you sat behind? Like, I wanted Bruce Wayne to be like, yo, wait. Like, how strong are you? Like, you didn't do anything. Like you knew exactly what's going on. You see my visions. You don't know what's going on, bro.
Well,
Really?
that could be dreams too. They may not necessarily be visions. You know what I mean? Like that could go either way. But I definitely get what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, when he has that dream at the end, and then the Joker's kind of hinting, he is definitely insinuating that he killed Robin, Jason
Yes.
Todd, who's we're making that assumption, right? Because that's how it was in canon. Um, but the thing is like they hint at that, but they've never even explored the options with Robin or any of that stuff yet. I was like, so if he's already on Jason Todd, that means Tim Drake is already Nightwing, which means you know,
Oh, you mean Rev Robin?
oh, Dick Grayson, my bad. Tim Drake
Yeah.
is after. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Right.
Dick Grayson's already Nightwing, right? And I was like,
Right.
so you kind of have to like you have to have some kind of Batman movie like going into that. You can't just like
Yeah.
drop that and then just like all you know what I mean? Like you're setting expectations for people at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's at least, I mean, at least do something. Maybe like a prequel comic or something. Like he talks about in the movie how he operated in Gotham for 20 years. And so basically everything is past, everything has happened. So he's like battled the Joker
No,
before.
he's the older one. He's middle aged now. Like he's getting to a point like should I retire, should I not type of thing.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah, he's
mean?
getting at that point. And it's like, so what are you guys gonna do? Like, like it doesn't make sense. They're just doing this reactionary filmmaking, and nothing's going anywhere, and the audience doesn't know where it's going. But what we do have is the Snyder Cut. I mean, besides Man of Steel, I feel like this is the best coherent DCEU film right now. I put this maybe neck and neck with Man of Steel. I don't know, but
I like Man of Steel because it was easy. It was to the point, right? And it was like,
exactly.
and it was linear. That's
Yes.
the best part about it. All of it makes sense. You know, it's not like you shouldn't go into a movie having more questions than answers coming out and not enjoying it. And that's what the original thing was, right? Like I didn't even enjoy it that much. And you're like, and you have question marks, not about the story, but just about like, what were they thinking? Like, it's like getting dressed to go to work without having any lights on and everything's mismatched. Like you would leave the house looking like that. Like you're going to make a movie that costs $200 million and think that you're going to release this and think that people are just going to be like, okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like
I mean, it's ridiculous
that's the studio
because
attitude as a whole. I feel like, you know, and they take advantage of that, and it's such a shame because, you know, you can compare DC and Marvel with this stuff all day long if you want, but Marvel, like, they don't take advantage of the fans. Like when they make something, even the minor heroes, they do it right. Like Ant-Man was really good.
yes,
Especially
it was surprisingly very good. Like very, very good.
And he is a minor character.
Yes.
And people still appreciate that, you know, like now they're going to be doing Daredevil, you know, they're adding, you know, Charlie Cox to that and, you know, the Punisher and all that. Like, that's great. They're going to be throwing these guys in here who are great with the Netflix stuff and they're putting it in there. I'm like, man, this is going to be really, really good now. And DC, I mean, if I was DC, the Teen Titans show is like, it's okay.
Wait, which show are you talking about? Titans on HBO Max?
The Titans, yeah, the Titans show is okay.
You know, yeah, it's slow. It's like, how does it work in the whole Panther? I wish they would just come out and say flat out, these things are not connected or they are connected. Just let us know. Just let us know if TV is separate, because we got the CW shows, we got the HBO Max shows, we got the DCEU. Like, everything's in this big cognizant, and they're using the same characters. That's one thing about Marvel. They had limitations. In the beginning, they didn't have all their characters. They didn't have their most popular characters. So they had to take these, like, They
had to figure out Spider-Man until they were like, look, Sony, like, we made a mistake selling this guy to you.
Exactly. So let's make it.
Well, at least Sony understands that they're making way more money than they could take in half than if they did something by themselves.
Exactly. And like, Marvel took these C-level characters. No one cared about Iron Man that much. No one cared about Thor that much. Captain America was okay for its time.
No, Spider-Man's the most influential comic book character ever, right with Batman. Like, those two, everyone knows. Like, you can go to the middle of Nepal and the Nepalese monks that live in Everest know who Spider-Man and Batman are.
Yes.
But they don't know who Iron Man is. You know what I mean?
But since they didn't have that character, they had to work with their C-level characters.
They had to build it up.
That's the problem with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has always owned DC, so they always had the same toys to play with. So, and they never, in the history of having DC, stop playing with those same Batman and Superman toys. They just keep rehashing stuff. And how many Batman animated shows are there? How many Batman movies are there? How many different Batman universes, movies, like, there's so much. And I'm like, how about you shelf these characters for a little bit? Like, the Bat family is so so extensive. Like, you can take any kind of tier, second tier member, make like a whole team. Then you can bring back Batman. They did that in the animated show. Like, oh, Superman, Batman, you're back. Like, what happened when you guys were away in space? Like, oh, let me tell you what happened. And then we could go into space, with the Lantern Corps. The Lantern Corps, I feel like they should have started the DCEU in space with the Lantern Corps and then brought it to Earth.
Even though they dropped that for 30 seconds in the Snyder Cut, but at least it was there.
At least it was there, man. You could see that Snyder has a whole plan. And he said it in the interview, man. I think he said maybe 5 years of
films. That's what we talked about, 5 years. He's got 5 years worth in his headquarters in Texas. And they're not going to do anything. Not a single thing.
Oh my
That's the
gosh.
crazy part. And I'm like, because look, the whole thing is AT&T owns all of this now, right?
Mm.
But they're not understanding, because when you have companies like this buy this type of thing, when they're not used to having this type of media entertainment, like when Disney bought Marvel and Star Wars, they were already built on a family oriented type of thing. Like they know how to capitalize on that. AT&T started with like, like cell phones. And I mean, originally they were Bell Atlantic and they were like a landline company. So it's like, and
Yeah.
then they have to evolve because they know that's not the only way they make money. So now, if you don't know, if you're not built on family entertainment, you got to hire the right people to do that. Disney did that with Kevin Feige when it
Yes.
came to the whole, when
That's
he,
what DC needs. Kevin Feige, man.
well, it's the same with Star Wars, right? Like they kind of like cut Kathleen Kennedy out of certain things, and I completely forget his name. What's his name? Who
John
we've talked
Favreau.
about? Yes, no, the other one, the
The
other
other
guy
one.
who,
Animated guy. Animated
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
I just had a brain fart.
But anyways, they have these guys. They have these guys do it, and it keeps the continuity. But they have the same guys, even if they don't like directly create it. They produce it, and they have a say on like, hey, this is where we should go with this,
right.
and it helps, you know. And it's like with DC, it's like, look, you have a Disney Plus equivalent with HBO Max now. Start making things that can start driving people's interest in these movies, like have some minor roles and stuff. Like, look, the fact that they made the Winter Soldier and Falcon and Disney Plus that, well, it was good. I haven't seen the last episode yet, but but the fact that they were able to, exactly, so the fact that they're able to do that, and they got Loki and all these other characters now, like that's just such free money. Like the fact that Disney Plus went up $1, no one really cared because you see all of this stuff, right?
I mean, back to your point, the first point that you made, like when Disney announces something, it gets done. Like
Exactly.
they
That was
might
done.
shuffle some schedule dates, release dates, but if
It
they
gets done.
announce Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings is coming out. Like if they announce
I'm looking forward to that. I love
Doctor
that.
Strange and Multiverse of Madness, best believe that's coming out, right? So like DC is just doing. Oh, Dave Filoni, that's his name.
Dave
Dave
Filoni,
Filoni.
thank you. Yes.
Yes, who I think should take the reins of the whole Star Wars pantheon. I mean,
Yes.
let's be honest, The Mandalorian has saved Star Wars, but that's a whole other topic. But like,
Yes.
that's what they need, though. DC needs one visionary to bring it home. I feel like for me, it was Zack Snyder. Some people didn't like his vision. Like some people were arguing, like, "Oh, Superman killed people. Batman had machine guns on his ship." But I'm like, just think of it.
No.
Just think of it as like the Snyderverse. Just think of that. Like, just think
Right.
in this universe, Superman killed Zod. In this universe, Batman has machine guns. He's been operating
But
for
they've
20
killed
years.
people. That's the thing. Like, it's not like they haven't. Like, they get to a point where they do kill people.
Thank you.
It's not.
Thank you.
It's so, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't keep them pure. Like, that's not how that works. The whole point of their character is that they get to a point where they have no choice anymore, and they got to make that choice. Like, they gotta corrupt their own moral standards in order for them to do that. And I
Do you
mean,
think Steppenwolf is a character that they could just throw in jail? I mean, like
or Zod. Zod's the same way.
Zod
You know?
got to the point where he was like, "Look, you're not going to do anything unless you kill me. You're not going to stop me." That's basically what Zod said at Man
Yeah.
of Steel. And it's not like in this universe, in Snyder universe, I don't believe Superman has the what's it called, negative zone or phantom zone. He doesn't have that yet. So you got to cut his head off like they did in the Snyder cut. Like there's no other choice, man. They're just going to keep coming. Even Darkseid looked at the head, was like, "I'll be back. I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way." And it's like, oh man, oh, here we go. So it's like,
Yeah.
just take it for what it is. It's the Snyderverse, man. Like, and
I
I
think
like
that
the
should be
Snyderverse.
original. Like that should be what it's built on. It shouldn't have to be called a Snyderverse. Like that should just be the actual like DC verse of it. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Like they should just have Snyder's like, look, this is what you got. You have all this. Like let's run with it. because
Yeah, just run with it. And at the end of the day, you have the Flash. You can just, if you have to recast people because they get old or we're 10 movies out, 10 years later, just re
Marvel did that with the
Flash.
Hulk.
Yes.
Edward Norton.
No one even
Remember, he was
really cried
part.
foul.
Remember, he was part of the whole Avenger initiative too. Like
Yep.
that's actually a canon movie,
Yep.
right? And it's like, and then you don't hear anything from Ed Norton again because he had some kind of meltdown. Or like, well, we're not going to have you in any more movies. You
Terrence
know,
Howard, same thing. Couldn't come to negotiations, so they just recast, and no
oh,
one
just
said
get Don
nothing.
Cheadle. Yeah,
Yeah, just get Don Cheadle, man.
yeah,
You know, Captain Planet himself, man. So,
yeah, exactly. No, no, you're right though,
so
and
it
but it's
works.
not like it's not done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. Like, there's so much you could do. Just let him run with his vision. At the end of the day, if you don't like it, you could switch things up. I feel like that's what Disney did with Star Wars. You know, uh, whether you like Kathleen Kennedy's direction or not, it kind of got remixed with The Mandalorian. And now The Mandalorian has spun out a couple of new shows, like Boba Fett's Book of Boba Fett or something like that.
Yeah, Book of
And
Boba. Yeah,
we got a whole crop of stuff coming out from Dave Filoni with the Bad Batch, and he's part of the Mandalorian. I think he's part of the
and the
Boba Fett too.
Rangers too.
The Rangers, that's what I'm thinking of. The
Yeah,
Rangers
yeah,
too.
but that
Yeah.
got changed because of Corona leaving.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, because that whole show was supposed to be based on Gina Carano's character, and then with her getting axed. Well, not axed, but not re-signed. So I call it axed because you said this whole show is about her, and then you're not renewing her contract. Like that's pretty much what it is.
They're like, oh, we're going in a whole different direction. You know,
okay,
we're going to focus on the Jedi. Don't you like Jedi?
Yeah. Just gonna say we don't like it. We don't like your politics, so we're just gonna make another bad Jedi show instead. Like, give me a freaking break.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, people want to make it political, but she just was let go. She was never re-signed. It wasn't a political thing. In fact, they announced that it was in November of last year that they just didn't renew her contract. So people try to equate it to what happened this year with her tweet, but actually she just wasn't re-signed before then. It's just it didn't come to the attention of the public until this year. And so people are trying to make it political.
Right, but I mean, based on what she said, though, so I'm going to take her word for it until it's proven otherwise that we shouldn't. She definitely, because she had a whole show based on this stuff. Like Jon Favreau already had this like ready to roll, and then because of the stuff she put on Instagram and tweeted out, it was pretty inflammatory, right, about the Jews and everything. But it's like the problem is that when you have guys like Pedro Pascal using a very, very similar type of rhetoric with kids at the border in cages, comparing it to Holocaust and Jews and the Holocaust, and no one says a word and they applaud it, you know what I mean? It kind of treats it as an unequal type of thing. And, and it's like, look, you're right. Like, it's business at the end of the day. Whatever company doesn't want to hire you for your services, they're more than entitled to. But I agree with that. But the thing is, Disney has so much sway in this, it's not really fair either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it was reported that it was a Disney choice. It wasn't Lucasfilms, and Jon Favreau is not very happy about the decision.
No, he's not.
But it's
his defense, he defended her. Pedro Pascal defended her, even though they don't agree with what she's saying. They defended her because it's like, at the end of the day, it's like
they should. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you only have so many people online who's creating this idea that the world doesn't agree with what she's saying, and it's like, and they cater to this cancel type of culture mentality, which goes on both sides of the aisle. I'm not just saying it's on one, but it's like you have so many people. It creates this mob that you think everything is like online. Everyone's just like, oh, well, we're never going to see another movie. You're going to lose so much money because you're going to employ someone that said something like this. It's like absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because literally half the country feels the same exact way that she said. So you're not going to lose that much money. So really, it's going to be apples. You're going to have to choose one. You're either going to have to stick with your guns on this, which is what many companies have done over the years. Nick Cannon's a great example with Viacom, right? saying
right.
all of the stuff that he said about, Jewish people and Louis Farrakhan and all the other stuff, right? He got axed, but they brought him back because they lost a lot of money when he was axed because he was really good with producing, right? And this is the
Isn't
thing
that what they
is
did
that
with James Gunn? Was that a Disney decision to let James Gunn go?
I think so.
Because that was a ridiculous firing too. Like
Yeah,
that was a tweet from like 10 years ago.
Exactly. Look, just because he
was
said something dumb doesn't mean that you can just go ahead and fire him. But look, what I think prompted that was the fact that Warner Brothers was like, "Come make a movie for us, then," and they're like, "Oh crap! Like we don't."
We're gonna lose our golden goose, man.
One of the guys who's made one of the most popular franchises within Marvel is just going to go over there and completely redo something, that Ayers did okay on,
Yes.
And it's like,
because people don't realize, like, he also helped. He not only did he do Guardians 1 and 2, he also helped with the Guardians dialogue for the Infinity War movies, the Avengers movies. And that's not uncommon in Marvel. A lot of times, because their offices are so close together, directors will like, "Hey, so what are you going to do in your movie?" Yeah. So they like,
produce each other's movies, like they do writing and all. Like
so everything is cohesive.
Exactly.
Like, everything is in a continuity. So you really like crap the bed when you let this guy go. He's basically the voice of these characters, and people love these characters. Like, my wife only watches Marvel stuff because of the Guardians. So it's like, what are you doing here? And so they brought him back. Right. They was like, "Oh, after you're done with that DC movie, come back home, finish your trilogy." So it's like, you messed up. But it's like, for Gina Carano, yes, it was a code of conduct thing. Every company, people watching this, if you have a job, your company has a code of conduct, and if you break it, you're going to get fired. Like, back in like 2013, like when I was working at Toyota, like a worker got fired for putting up something on Facebook saying, "I'll never drive a Toyota. I'll always drive a Ford." Got fired for that. So everybody has a code of conduct. Do I agree with the firing? No. But it was reported they gave her multiple warnings. She kept it up. So it's like, hey, if we give you multiple warnings and you don't listen, this is all about money. It's nothing personal. It's about money. If you're going to lose this money, gotta let you go. But I don't agree with the firing, man. I feel like it distracts from the whole Star Wars, because it wasn't too far after Mandalorian ended that she got fired, and then that's all the coverage was. Optics. That's all the coverage was.
If she didn't say that, they would have the contract would have been renewed because they had things in place to do more things with her character. That's the thing, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, she was going to be that she's axed pretty much. It's not one of those things where, regardless, no matter if she didn't or did say those things, she wasn't going to be brought back. She had a whole show about her at the end of the day.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, and the problem is with the code of conduct thing is that it is enforced unequally, because you have other people saying very, very similar things with opposite political opinions, and they don't get talked. Nothing is said because the outrage mob agrees with it. That's the thing.
I don't get this whole Twitter profit movement. Like, I don't care if you making a whole show revolving around me, and I'm the guy. I'm not going to be spewing my mouth online. I have my own beliefs. I don't do that anyway. I don't.
Right. No, I don't believe. I try not to either. It's not a good look.
It's not effective, man. Like,
right.
Speech is way more than just the words. So your message is not going to get across in a 2-minute little tweet or whatever. So, like, I get it. That's a whole personal thing about you wanting attention or whatever. But I'm like, they put a whole show around you, and you were not listening to their warnings. Did you think that you were bigger than this company? Like, at the end of the day, the machine's going to keep rolling. The Star Wars franchise has so many characters, has so many female characters. Pick another one. That's probably what they said. They said, "Let me pick another one."
I say just enforce it equally. Where, look, if you support, You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to actors liking Republican or Democrat, they're not treated equally. I mean, that's just the truth. That's just how it works. And I mean, it's not like it's any secret that Hollywood isn't liberal in some kind of way. Like, if you think it's not, then you're completely living in another universe. You know what I mean? And that's fine. That's just how it is. But the thing is that you got 320 million people here. The last election showed that there's almost as many people feeling one way as the other. It's impossible now with everything that's going, with just how division works right now, that you can't cater one without the other, but at least enforce it equally. If Pedro Pascal says something about Joe Biden and then Gina Carano says something about Trump, tell them to both knock it out. That's it.
Right.
But the thing is that you have AT&T giving this much money to Joe Biden's campaign and nothing to Trump's campaign, and they, then it's not treated equally. That's really what it comes down to it. You know what I mean? And it's not like I make this stuff up, because this stuff is public record, which companies donate for what. So if Pascal is liberal, to them, he can say whatever he wants. To me, what he said about the border crisis and Jews in the Holocaust is just as crazy and offensive compared to what Gina Carano said.
Yeah,
and this is coming from someone
pretty much the same.
Who's married to a Jewish woman, right?
Right.
Whose family is my family is Orthodox Jews too. So it's like, and you can go in the Holocaust database with Lopatin. There's dozens of Lopatins in death camps, and I'm like, it's not like I identify in such a way where I'm just going to go ahead and use the victim card, but I look at it like it's the same to me. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's the same. And you can't go ahead and just not enforce it the same. The post is still on his Instagram. I was just looking at it. And it's just like, I don't understand. And that's the problem. But at the same time, I'm a capitalist. I understand. If I own a company and you say something dumb that I don't like, and it's going to affect my bottom line, you're going to get the heck out. I agree with that. But at the same time, for cohesion and for not creating and I guess emboldening this online rage mob that we have, if someone says something that I agree with, I'm also going to tell them to cut it out. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this, because you said something. You said his post is still up. Is this another? Do you think this is another we create the problem because we already have the solution scenario with Disney, where they fired James Gunn and then they were like, "Hey, we apologize. Look at us. We're good people. We made a mistake. We're bringing them back." Do you think that's the same situation?
She won't go back now because she's in a way better situation than she was. You know what I mean? With doing stuff with Ben Shapiro now. So she actually has a role in actually making movies, and it's starting to galvanize where we're so entrenched on politicalization, and corporations have caused this, where in movies in particular, you're starting now having right-wing media groups going to say, we don't need to have these like Lionsgate, like all these big normal production companies. We can make our own.
Right.
Now, regardless if you agree with that or not, I feel like it's an echo chamber with your views. And I don't think movies should be so politicized the way that they are, that you shouldn't have like your own personal views in there. And you know what I mean? And it's just, I feel like with this, it's just going to be an echo chamber of what they feel. Conservatives are just going to bounce their own views out and in their own movies, and nothing's going to get across, because the whole point of compromise is talking to someone else that doesn't agree with you. And you kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But if you're talking to someone that agrees with you on like 80% of the things, nothing's really going to get done. You know what I mean? That's why I read the New York Times and I read the Wall Street Journal. Even though I don't agree with the New York Times on a lot of things, but I do in the Wall Street Journal. I like both points of view, because at some point, whatever one side's saying, I want to have an idea, because maybe that changes me just a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't be so hardcore and see things black and white in one particular thing, And a lot of these movies are getting like this. Like, what was that movie with Will Smith and his son, where it was like the end of the world and they had to survive in the wild?
After Earth. I was just talking about that movie.
I'm like, why did this even have to go there? I mean,
Why
people still
does it
think
exist? Period.
what it's like all these things with like, people think that the world's going to catch on fire and just randomly end, which we've been hearing this for 25 years and it's still the same.
Yes.
We're making movies about this imminent danger. And
there's been movies made that had our timeline. Like by 2020, this is going to happen, and then 2020 is passed. It's like, nah, we're still on cell phones and social media, and we're fine.
A lot of people get their views on media, movies included. You know what I mean? Like, look, me and you were both susceptible to that too. It's not like we weren't any less different that long ago.
Nah.
You know what I mean? And then when you kind of get older, you're like, you see the BS for what it is. You know what I mean? And it's like, I try not to be extreme on so many things, but I feel like in order for me to have my opinion at least noticed, you have to be extreme because you're fighting another extremism at that point. You know what I mean? Because if you're in the middle, if you're like a true moderate in anything, you're just deemed as a cop out. And God forbid if you're a minority or if you're black or something, you're like, well, you're too whitewashed, you don't understand. And I see this on social media all the time, dude. It's like I don't understand, and I feel sorry.
Bots. Just stirring stuff up.
But those bots are creating fights with people who are real, not knowing that they're bots, and that's actually going to bring someone else, and it turns into this whole thing. You see it all the time. You know what I mean? But the thing is that these people that make these movies are no different than us, and they're putting this into the movies. So no matter how you look at it, you can go to watch sports, you watch movies. It's like I watch a movie really truly for most of the time to get away. When I watch Lord of the Rings, which great, still up to this day, The Return of the King with everything.
Oh yes.
You don't have to. There's you got orcs and Urkai, but you don't really have like this Democrat versus Republican debate in there, which you do in a lot of this stuff now. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be.
Wait till you watch the last episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You're gonna love it. But it's great. It's good. It's good, man. I mean, so what do you think? To bring it back full circle, what do you think the Snyder Cut is trying to say?
I don't think there's really much of anything. I think it's really just a. I think that's just a true comic book good movie. He doesn't really have. He doesn't have an alternate agenda. It's like artists when they paint a picture, when they paint something on a canvas, and you're like, what's the inner meaning with this? Now movies are like. It's like Christopher Nolan. Like they try to get cute, like how Christopher Nolan gets, but Christopher Nolan doesn't have this existential belief structure with stuff. You know what I mean? He doesn't put that in there.
When it comes to film. Except when it comes to film. That's his God. But okay.
Yeah. But
film versus digital, he's like, film is God.
Yeah. What? Interstellar, great example. There could have been multiple opportunities for him to go.
Judeo-Christian type of view or something, but at the end of the day, it was just like he was in a, well, you can interpret it how you want to interpret it, but he was either dead or he was in a different dimension. And it was the humans that created that dimension for him to pass through and get back to his daughter so he can get back home.
Well, he could have turned that whole thing into a global warming crisis, climate control crisis. Let me correct myself.
Yeah, and it would turn into Avatar.
Yeah, he could have gone in that direction. He did it.
I mean, Avatar, the thing was called unobtainium. Real subtle, my friend. Real subtle. Unobtainium. Okay. All right. We're going on.
But it's little stuff like that. It's just, people think like, people ask like, how did we get here? With stuff that, with trials on TV, with unjust and, with police officers acting a really awful way to certain people or killing them. Like you wonder how we get here. This is how we get here. Kids watching this stuff is how we get here. Having this idea, instead of having some kind of original thought for ourselves, this is where it starts. You listen to music, you watch movies, like it, in some kind of way, it really prevents you from living life the way that we did without the internet and stuff, where at least we had a chance of creating our own original thought. Like through
we still had imagination.
Right, with through life experiences. Now it's like, well, this kid said this on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, and everything is so, any piece of information is so easily obtained now that your own opinion, it just morphs constantly all the time, which is fine, which is great, but at the same time, it's not genuine. Nothing about it's sincere at all. And it's like, I feel like when it comes to I could kind of see where it was going with Winter Soldier and Falcon, especially in the last episode, right? About, no self-respecting black man should be Captain America. Like when he said that, I'm like,
oh,
why go there? Why go? I was like, why even?
It's true, man. It's true, man. You get that all the time, man, with people. I was just talking with a friend about this yesterday because we went to the comic book store to look for comics for Milestone Comics, Falcon Comics.
Yeah.
We talked about it because he's a veteran himself, and he was like, man, he's black, he's a veteran. He was like, man, when I saw that hit me hard, man. He was like he grew up on that stuff, man, and he was just like, man, that hit me hard. It made me really think. And I was like, really? Like, see, these films can do that to you. This kind of art can do that to you. It could speak that voice that you've always wanted to say but couldn't really articulate for yourself. And it can bring people in who just wanted to see some action, but to get a little glimpse into a different world. And then
that's true, yeah.
You also have the option of escaping with giant gorillas and giant Godzillas fighting each other. And you can escape for a bit, and then you can come back and you can see, because when it comes to Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't feel like it was taking a certain political stance. Especially with the last episode. I know you say you didn't see the last episode, but it's kind of like Sam was like, without giving too away, he was like, all right, I'll take what you said into consideration. I feel like the whole show was Sam like sponging in everybody's viewpoint on a decision that he has to make in the end. And then in the end, he was just like, all right, I'm gonna do what I want though.
And look, I think here's the thing with this, the fact that, I mean, canon-wise, Sam becomes Captain America anyway. I think it's a great step to have someone who's African American or black, who is the head of one of the biggest comic book characters Marvel's ever written, especially one of the most long-lasting ones. Guys, that character's been around for almost 100 years now. And if you have someone who's black doing that, like, that's huge, because it's like, at first, really, it was just Black Panther. That was like the first big one. You know what I mean? But now since Chadwick Boseman passed, literally the first one. Even though we talked about this in the last podcast. How many are there? Why do you have to make new ones when there's so many great ones already existing?
Exactly. We talked about that last time. Like, stop this whole racial swap thing. Like, and it seems anytime there's a racial swap, it seems like they use black. They just go to black because black is so visceral. Like, I'm a black nerd. I know there's so many different black characters already out there. Like, I don't need you to try to maybe it is political. Maybe I don't need you to try to make a political or check off your quota box by switching this character that's never historically been this race or this gender or whatever and swapping it. Yo, there's characters out there that are deaf. There's characters out there that are blind. There's characters that are black. There's characters that are Asian. There's characters that are Hispanic. We don't need to just keep like, you know what? Nightwing's going to be Asian now. You know what? Not Green Lantern's not a good one, but like, there's so many characters.
There's too many. No, I get what you're saying. Like, you don't have to change someone who's already originally white and so many different interpretations and turn him black when there's so many great black characters that people should be introduced to. And like
Blade, arguably the first successful Marvel movie to date, the first one in '98. No one knew he was a Marvel character, but nonetheless, he was still a Marvel character. Blade, which really jumped off the comic books jet stream. People were like, oh, there's money in this game. It's like,
No,
yeah.
exactly.
And you
No,
know why that
100%.
movie made money? They didn't change the character for who he was. They kept the rating, or they kept the fact that he's a vampire, half vampire. They kept the character as himself, and so it sold, and people loved the movie, and they saw that there was money coming out of that. Like you don't change the characters just so you can check off a box. That just makes us roll our eyes. No one asked you to do this. No one asked the voice actor of Abu to step down and apologize. No one cared. Okay, it's just a voice. No one cares.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby wrote those characters so long ago in the height of the civil rights movement as a response to that. And they were trying to morph
Exactly.
society into a better place. But doing this stuff now is not doing that. That's creating the opposite effect. I
It's
understand,
checking a
like
box.
when we talked about earlier, get rid of politicalization of media and stuff. Like the thing is, if it's for something good, but the ulterior motive is like, this is the view and this is it. And if you disagree with it, you're evil and that's it. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did it through a creative means, and they tried to change the culture from the inside by doing stuff like this, and it worked. It takes a while, but it works. I don't think we're in a worse situation now than we were then, personally. Like I don't have to be black to see that.
I
I've
think you
lived in
just touched on it too.
I went to inner city schools. I understand where it's predominantly black. Like I understand certain things. I don't have to be black to not understand. And then, if I get shouted, oh, you have to be black for me to like get this, like that's not true. You know what I mean? Like me. You've been my best friend for half of my life almost at this point. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm not a racist person by any means. You know this. Obviously, I'm talking to you. You were my
Yeah,
best man at my wedding. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like that's just
yeah,
how it
yeah.
is. And it's like I'm welcoming to that stuff, but it's gotten to a point now where in order for you to have some kind of voice in something, you have to identify that way for you to be credible. You can talk about people who are, you not being a veteran, you not being Jewish, like you can still say this stuff and it matters. Like, hey, how that person talks about them is like messed up, or, I think we should go about it this way. Like, just because you identify a certain way doesn't mean you know what's best for your whole demographic as a whole. That's why
Exactly.
that's why I think that's
That's
why
like
I think
me
the
growing up in
president
the
should.
that's like me being in the when I was going to school in grade school and being the only black kid in the school, and a
Right.
teacher turns to me and be like, "So what's the black opinion?" Like, what? This
I
doesn't
don't
work.
know. This is
I don't
Do you
know.
think that I embody every black voice in America? You know how many people disagree with
Exactly.
me?
And I think you touched on it earlier. Why? Because one thing I do notice, whenever they change a character to black or whatever, and they just do it out of to check the box, like the true fans who are white, black, Hispanic, whatever, it doesn't matter what they are, the true fans don't like it. It's the people who are not really fans who just see something on their news feed and they're like, yes, yes, Superman's black. And we're all like, yo, we don't need Clark Kent being black. There's
No,
already other Supermen in different dimensions that are black.
no.
Like, so
We
what are
don't
we
need this
doing here?
Clark Kent to be black. That's the problem.
And you
Don't
touched
make
on
this
it.
Kent
Like,
black.
I think we don't like it because it's not creative. It doesn't deserve merit. Because if you just slap on a different race, a different actor, that's not creative. Like having a different like character. I think his name is you probably know this better than me, but Valzad, who's the black Superman in one of the universes. That's creative because he has his own origin. He has a
That's
whole
I
different
love
thing.
it. It's so great. You don't need to have Clark Kent, who was originally his parents died in a horrible like way because the planet was going to explode, and then you have to make him black. Like the black
Yeah,
original is better. It is just as good, if not better. You don't have to. It's like when we had this talk about whitewashing, right? When you had certain characters who were historically shouldn't be, like Jake Gyllenhaal in The Prince of Persia. Why is Jake Gyllenhaal literally the only white person in this movie?
no, he's not
You
the
know,
only one.
well, you get what I'm saying, though. The
Yeah,
only big
yeah,
one. But then you
yeah,
see it. You see some of the side guys. They're Persian and stuff. You're like,
yeah, and
they
they
could.
die
They
off
couldn't.
and everything.
Yeah,
Gods of
but
Egypt. I'm looking at you. That
yes,
movie
Gods of Egypt.
where
Yeah, but
everybody was Scottish. Like, come on,
well, the
man.
Oscars got. The Oscars got hammered for this a few years ago with the whole whitewashing. It's like, why is everyone nominated white now? now they have to go out of their way to make sure someone's black. They have to, like, or minority of some kind. You know what I mean? And now it's the complete reversal. It's the complete reversal of it. Like, we've overcompensated to such a point to feel like people need to be included, that it's starting to create what Terry Crews has said, a black supremacy type of thing. And
we're not going to quote Terry Crews in this podcast.
No, I'm saying that, but you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. It's
and I'm not saying I agree with what he said with that. But I get what he's saying. What was the point? Yes, exactly. Yes. And that was what he was trying to say. He said that in a defining moment, in a definitive way, where he kind of, because like you said with tweets, you got 200 characters, dude. When you say that, people are just going to run with this, like, oh, black supremacy, like that's them. Like, dude, like, have some context. Like, if you're going to tweet something like that, that's like brand new, and people are like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, blacks were enslaved. It wasn't white people enslaved. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, say something other than Twitter on that. Like, say. But
I think he missed the mark, man. Because for me, it doesn't seem like a black supremacy has happened, a Hispanic supremacy has happened.
I don't think
seems
so
like it's a gender supremacy or something like that.
No, I think it's a minority. It's anyone that's not white or straight. That's what it is.
Wow.
It's any.
That's pretty simplification.
Well, I mean,
it's not wrong, but
it's
kind of clumping like people together. And but I see what you're saying, because there's been like articles coming out of like, Hollywood shows that if you're white and male and straight, your career is going to go catastrophic. But if you're otherwise, then it's not. And it kind of goes hand in hand with like, oh, you're all putting us in the same box. And it's probably what some of these studios are looking at, like, oh, as long as this character is not straight, white, and a white male, then hey, we check the box.
Exactly. That's the problem. And that's what I'm getting at. And it's tough to articulate, because for me, at the end of the day, I'm exactly all of those things that people like despise in some circles, So like, when I'm trying to say, so when I can convey my opinion, so I can at least make it seem like I'm credible in some ways, like I know I'm never going to convince everyone. Some people I'm going to be demonized, and just how it is. And, I don't know if you listened to that Russell Brand and Matthew McConaughey conversation I told you to listen to, but they hit a lot of things on the head with this stuff, dude. Like, as you probably know, Matthew McConaughey is a very outspoken Christian guy, and that's very rare in Hollywood. But the guy's from Texas.
Well, tell that to Chris Pratt.
Well, do you see anything coming out of Chris Pratt's mouth anymore?
Not anymore. They castrated that man. Anything he put up, man, I don't know what it was. I don't know why the universe hated Chris Pratt, but he was labeled the worst Chris. I'm like, who is making these? Like, leave him alone. Like, we don't care. He's Star-Lord.
It's not like he's spewing hate on Instagram saying, because I'm a Christian, I don't like gays or any one part of the LGBTQ community, plus, right? Like, he's not saying that. But what I'm saying is just, what I'm saying is like, look, I only judge people based on what they say. Like, his church doesn't say that stuff. So it's like, to me, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I have friends who have said some rather anti-Semitic things. Do I take that personally to the point where I'm just going to judge them based on them as a person? I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people thinking now that Jews are responsible for why blacks were enslaved to begin with. And I'm like, I don't understand where this stuff comes from. And that was the original issue with Nick Cannon, because he got on flat earthers. He defended Deshaun Jackson, who plays football, saying that, the original slavers were Jews because they owned the ships that took them part of the Africa to America. And I'm like, I don't understand this at all. Like, I was like, did you ever read the Old Testament of the Bible? how many times in history were Jews like enslaved? Like we've had this talk too, and especially when most of Hollywood's production companies are Jewish, you would think that they would try to find ways to mend like blacks and Jews like relationships. You know what I mean? Like we can understand things better than anyone. You know what I mean? But the problem is with being Jewish is that, like you said, black is visceral. There is no defining characteristics of me or Heather. Like, you have stereotypical views like noses and stuff, but like, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day,
not unless you're walking out the house with a yarmulke.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I mean, my sideburns curl if I grow my hair long enough. You know what I mean? I got tattoos. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like you got certain defining characteristics, which is your name. And that's really what it comes down to, your last name, your origination. That's really what you see it as. You know what I mean? Like, I'm no Greenberg, I'm no Goldstein, I'm a Lopatin, you know? So it's like, for me, and, you know, it took a long time for me to be proud of that heritage. And I was kind of taught where it was like, you know, my dad would always jokingly say, oh, we're Greek or we're Albanian. I was like, you should be proud with the fact that you come from Eastern European Jews, Russian in particular, and we have a very great ancestry with that. And we can directly see that and trace that. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, like how you're talking about Jewish pride is how that's like how I felt with Black Panther and Falcon.
You should. They were great. They're great characters. They're wonderful characters.
Exactly. You know? And like you said with the last name, not a lot of Black people have that luxury of having their original Black names from their ancestors. But when you see something like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where the Falcon sits down with Isaiah Bradley, who went to jail for 30 years for something that the same thing that the white Captain America did, kind of puts things into perspective. I mean, the writing was amazing. The fact that he said, look, man, like, we built this country. I refuse not to be able to fight for it. You know, 100%. This is my country. For a lot of Black Americans, this is our country, this is our origin. But yet we still have this kind of diaspora of not knowing where we come from and not knowing our heritage. So our heritage is American. So when we see stuff like this, where it's kind of political, where it's not, we see the Falcon and Winter Soldier, we see Black Panther. For some people, Black Panther was like, yo, that's my origin. Yo, that's where I come from. Like, Black Panther took a whole lot of people and gave them like a
identity.
Yes. I tell you one thing, man, I seen Black Panther 3 times in theaters. Every time I seen grown Black men cry. Every time.
Good. I like that because that's the type of identity you want, instead of enabling this type of identity that we have in very urban environments. And then we got it, you know what I mean? And
I tell you one thing, you won't get those same reactions that I got at Black Panther if you just turn, let's say, Batman black. If you just turn Bruce Wayne black. Let me say that. Because there is a Black Batman, I'm going to say, if you turn Bruce Wayne black, or if you turn Clark Kent black, it's not going to have the same effect. Not at all.
No, absolutely.
It's not creative. It's not a, I don't want to say agenda for lack of term, but Black Panther is who he is for a reason. His origin is what it is for a reason. Clark Kent, he, as a white man, well, can we call him a man? Because he's an alien, but as a white man, he is who he is. And who he is defines him, how he grew up. If you just slap on a black label on there, it's not going to have the same effect. And that's what all we're saying is, like, let's stop with the studio shenanigans. Let's get down to let's do something for story's sake. You know, like when I was watching Mortal Kombat and I watched a review, I think it was Jeremy Johns. He said, I would have liked some more lore instead of all that gore. Seems like they concentrated on that gore. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the same way. More lore over the gore. So give me more story over you checking the box. Come on, studios. Let's do better. We don't need to check the box.
I was by it.
He said,
No,
it's a
like there wasn't as much violence as I thought there would be, but that's besides the point. But no, you're right. It's look, you're a filmmaker. Like, do you pay attention to this stuff more than I do? I look at it because I'm a consumer for the product. I have that. I only have that type of point of view and that mindset only, and that's it. I remember when we went to college, I sat in one of your acting classes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And because my thing's business. Like for me, it's like I have a whole different way of doing things. So for me, I see things based on numbers and things not in the sense that we're talking about like black and white, but I see in black and white like cut and dry. You know what I mean? Stats, statistics, all that. And at the end of the day, that's how I break everything down. So if one particular city or whatever is dysfunctional, but you see how much poverty is there, okay, I look at that. And then you see the demographics breakdown. I look at that. But then you go to West Virginia or somewhere in the middle of Kansas, and it's just as poor, but then the stats are flipped, and instead of being predominantly black, it's majority white. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at it, and that's why I don't see that the world is a place where it's at where I think that it was 50 years ago, like you were talking about with the character from the Winter Soldier and Falcon. Because look, he was in a place where 100% the system was rigged and vehemently racist, and it was the cards were stacked against anyone who was black to have a good, successful life. Not saying it was impossible, saying that it was super difficult where I couldn't even understand. And when he says that, I'm like, I feel that, but I didn't have a problem with him for them putting that in. I have a problem with it because they're insinuating the system is like that now. And I don't agree with that. Because I see way too many people, such as yourself, and we have friends who are black too, who are very successful. And with me working on Wall Street, how many dudes on Wall Street you think are really white? Just really think about it. It's not the Wolf of Wall Street. Not everyone's just doing coke and doing whatever with prostitutes. Like, dude, it's a huge melting pot for people of all ethnic origins, and they're hyper rich, like wealth that people can't even begin to understand. And I saw that with my own eyes, and I was one of I would say half the time, I was the guy in the room where there was other people that didn't look like me. It's true. And I love that. It proved to me that wealth or poverty doesn't see in color. It doesn't. It's really just circumstance, unfortunately. So I feel like people are treated a certain way based on their socioeconomic level, not based on race or any of that stuff. If you're poor, you're probably going to be treated pretty crappy, unfortunately. That's just how it is. And it's just like we get so many of these ties in with the movies now. Like, these people don't understand what a person that lives in Brooklyn or in Queens who happens to be black deals with on a daily basis. Like, they don't understand. These people are millionaires who have their own armed security, who live in 10,000 square foot homes in LA worth $25 million. There's no way they have an understanding of how this stuff, how the average person lives. They don't. There's no concept. That's why I have these, and when they brought that thing in with the Winter Soldier, it's like, I agree with what they were trying to do, but I felt like it was taken to a context of it being too political, because what it's doing is that it's making it seem like people like myself are the reason why they were in that situation to begin with. Here's the thing. My family hasn't even lived in this country long enough for me to even have slavery. Like, they don't. I have no ties to this country beyond 1950 something. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not responsible. Like, I'm just a product of, because my family came here because of Stalin. Like, that's it. You know what I mean?
Well, I gotta give some pushback on that, because as a black man, I have witnessed racism. I have been stopped by the cops certain times. I've had good experiences with cops. I've had bad experiences with cops. I've had good experiences with people on the street. I've had bad experiences with people on the street just because I was dark skinned and I was black. So when he said that, and two, you got to remember that Isaiah, who's a fictional character, I would say he's a different
Oh, he's
generation.
not even canon?
No. He's canon. He's canon. That happened.
Okay. I didn't know. I didn't know if
No, I mean
was...
like I was gonna say Isaiah is a different. He's from a different generation, but in the comic books and in the show, he was actually there in World War II. So
I'm not familiar with his character so much. I thought he was just a villain.
Okay. Everything he said in the show is canon with the comics.
Okay.
So it's like you got to remember he was actually there.
Right.
He was actually imprisoned for 30 years. You know,
I'm not denying that.
Yeah, there's some people who look like me who were in prison for 30 years for like a dime bag of weed. There's people out there who, I mean, look at the Central Park 5. Look at that. I mean, like there still is systemic racism. Is it as it was as it was back then? Probably not. But there's still systemic racism. There's still stuff going on. There are still some people keeping it alive. But one thing I will say, talking to my boy yesterday, who's the black vet, we noticed one thing is that the generation after us, we don't know, man. We see hope, man. I tell you one thing, like, I look at the generation after us. I had an old job. I used to work with some young guys, and white, black, Hispanic, they're all hanging out with each other. They got no problems.
Our generation's like that. It's our generation. Our generation's
that's true.
Like that too.
That's true. My mom used to call me the United Nations because I had Indian friends, white friends, black friends. Like I had friends all over the place. But there is still some people who are old, and I laugh because that same friend, he always talks about how racism is going to die when all those old racist people are dead because they're the ones who are like clinging on to this racism, like this systemic racism.
Product of their environment. Like I know you're right, and I'm not saying that it does not exist. Because look, I can't pretend to even begin to understand that your interactions with police because you're black. Like
you're saying basically what I say to anybody else. Yes, I acknowledge that happens because people ask me all this all the time. Yes, I acknowledge systemic racism happens. I experience racism. Yes, I've experienced it. But at the end of the day, there's no reason for me not to succeed. I'm not going to let it cripple me. Basically, I'm going to succeed. And the only way I'm not going to succeed is if you shoot me down right now. So I'm going to succeed regardless of all the barriers that you want to say is there or that are there. I'm going to succeed regardless, And I do see some people who are crippled by the idea and they'll see the barriers out there. They'll see the systemic racism. They'll see racist people appear to be like, hey, I'm not going to succeed. So I might as well not even try. But for people like me, I see people like Tyler Perry. I see people like Charlemagne. I see people like Ava DuVernay. I'm like, that's greatness that I want to accomplish, that black greatness. I'm going to get there. And I'm not going to let anything happen. And I don't want to give away what happened in the episode, but I feel like that's the same thing that Sam said to Isaiah when he made his decision in the last episode. Because he's basically said, look, I acknowledge that all this has happened. I'm a black man. I witnessed it. But I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show everyone.
Yeah, of course.
You'll see that in the episode. And that's all that is to say. Stop with the studio shenanigans. All right. We see what you're doing.
No, I like your input on this stuff because, look, there's only so much I can do because, I mean, it's just what it is.
I get that shit. Excuse me, but I get that stuff as a filmmaker too. I've made short films, and I've had people come up to me. I was going to ask you that.
Do you think your cards are stacked against you because you're black with filmmaking?
Not like they were back in the day. There may be some.
What's back in the day? Look, we're in 2021 now. What's back in the day? 20 years ago?
I consider back in the day like my mother and father's generation. Like my mother,
the 60s, the 70s.
Yeah, like my mother actually marched. My mother actually marched. So I consider that back in the day. Sorry, Mom. I know I'm not trying to say you're old, But I consider that back in the day. But for me, I try not to think about that because I'm like, there's so many resources and there's so many opportunities for me to succeed. I mentioned it one time in a podcast where it frustrated me when I first started doing filmmaking because I looked around my peers and um, the only opportunities that were available were for me when I first started acting were for me to be
Mm-hmm.
a drug dealer or an addict. And I'm
Wesley Snipes. That was the only way they could win awards. And you made that joke for most of our friendship.
yeah,
It's like the only way Black people won Oscars is if they're a drug dealer or some kind of act or something. Wesley Snipes. Like,
yeah. And mind you, I'm not even talking about like big. I'm not talking about roles for like NBC or CBS. I'm talking about like independent stuff just around the the Delaware area that frustrated me, which led me to be more than just an actor, which led me to be a filmmaker to make my own stuff. And
I
I
like that.
have
Yeah.
received pushback where people were like, "Oh, yo, where's the black element in this? You're in this. You're acting in this. You're creating this. Where's the black element?" And I think people are starting to see it now, where we're like, "Okay, we get it. We're all black. Enough with the slavery movies. Enough with the cop killing black people movies. I'm so sick of that. Like, look at Jordan Peele's doing. He's just doing regular horror movies with black people.
I love
Like,
that. That's
yeah,
great.
like
When he said
we're
that his
regular people. Show
leading
that.
actors in his movies are going to be Black, I was like, great. This is
Yeah.
how you can start changing things on a cultural level. You start in creating this empowerment. You give people resources who typically didn't have the resources necessary, because that's what we talked about this before too with Jews, dude. Why are they successful? Why are people jealous of them? It's simple. We save our money for our entire lives so we can give it to our kids so our kids can teach their kids the same thing, and they do the same thing over and over again. So that's why by the time they're 35, they have a nice house, they're educated, they have a good job, they do all the right things. Now, I'm
Well,
not saying everyone's like that, but that's just how it is, because that's just the outreach,
well, that's
and
what
Peel doing that is exactly what that's what other successful Black people should do, especially in the industry, because the industry is a scratch your back, I scratch yours. You got to do that. And he is one of the first ones I've seen to actively do that. And that is one of the greatest things I don't like all of his movies, but the fact that he does that shows that, this dude understands. You
who
know what I mean?
who you
Jordan
talking about?
Peele.
Oh, Jordan
Jordan
Peele. Yeah,
Peele.
yeah,
He
yeah.
understands.
But yeah, but that's another thing too. Malcolm X said, was it Malcolm X? I think it was Malcolm X who said like, oh no, it was Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan, who said
Oh,
we should watch the Jews, we should watch the Asians, like, because he was talking about how they keep their dollars in their community. He was like, we as a people, we as a black people should do the same. We need to keep our dollars black, just like the Asians and the Jews, so that we can. It's basically investing in yourself. I try to do that. I mean, Killer Mike talks about that all the time. He started his own bank and everything like that, and that piggybacks onto something else that you touched on earlier about the Oscars, and I talked about this in another podcast. Like, hey, if you're black, hey, if you're Hispanic, hey, if you're Asian, you don't feel like you're being represented. Stop putting so much merit into the Oscars. Make your own Oscars. You have plenty of actors, influencers, musicians who have all this money. Make your own award show. Make your own network. There's
it's
people out there floating with money who can make their own studio. That's what I
Gina
want to do.
Carano is an example. She went to someone who had a bunch of money, who agrees with her politically, is like, let's make our own. Like, I don't have to agree with them, but I'm like, we need to do more of that. We don't need to put all of our eggs in one basket. Like, this is the end all be all, who's a successful actor and who's not. Because
Mm-hmm.
let's be real, Hollywood for a very long time was super prejudiced and very highly racist. Like, let's be real. I mean, how long was it that they didn't even allow homosexuals like to even act openly? Like Tyrone Powers, great example. The guy who did Zorro, he was a closet gay. No one knew until he died. Could
Cary
you
Grant, I
imagine if
think
he
too.
came out? Huh?
I think Cary Grant was too.
Yeah, but it's like, but I mean, it doesn't have to just be with race. It's like with anything. If the powers that be deem this as unacceptable,
Make your
you
own.
have to diversify it, make your own, so that way they can. That's really what it comes down to. It. You know what I mean? Like, make your own brand. Do anything. Make
Yes.
something that's acceptable where it's like, okay, you think of brands, they back certain words that are super rhetorical and highly racist and stuff. Make your own that combat that. That's the whole
Yep.
point of why we have capitalism the way it is. Make your own studio. Do this. Like, it is possible. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but everyone that I know that is very well to do and rich and have their own type of success, they worked relentlessly to get it. I'm not saying that it's going to be equal for everyone. Like, ideally for me, I would like it where no matter what color or what sexual orientation or what gender you are, I want it to be where everyone has an equal opportunity to get what they want, not have it handed out equally, but have the ability to go get it themselves. You know what I
Yeah, I want to
mean?
get to the point where somebody's casted in a movie. They may be black, they may be Asian, they may be gay, they may be
Whatever.
trans.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what they are. I want to get to the point where it's not a headline, where it's just a normal
exactly.
thing.
No, exactly. And we're still, it's like when actors come out that I'm gay, I'm like, okay, that's great. But it is 12, 13 years now. Come
I
on.
know.
It's time. It's
I
like
know.
you want it to be normal, but you want to treat it as a specific characteristic of yourself that's identifiable. You're still creating this rift why people can't accept it yet. Because you're making it seem like that it has to be something that people have to accept for. If you just say it, and then it's like, this is not who I am. This is just who I love. And that's okay. People are going to move on from it. That's just part of it. You don't have to shove it down people's throats. You don't have to do that. And at some point, you're going to get what you want if you do that. It's just how it's how humans work. We are like this on a natural level. You remember this when we were in school, especially elementary school, at lunch tables. Did we not naturally segregate ourselves to the people we identified with? Dude, it's in us. It's a biological thing. We cannot fight that. But what we can do is reduce the amount of hatefulness that we got going on. And if someone disagrees with me, like you disagreed with me when I said something earlier, it was like, look, I'm gonna push back on it. I listened to you. At the end of the day, it's like, look, there's only so much I can understand because I'm not a black guy. I understand. Like I understand that I don't understand. You know what I mean? And it's like I feel bad that you had to go through that. It sucks, you
That's even
know?
like with my friend, like that line that Isaiah said, he took it on a whole different level because he's not only black, but he's a vet. I couldn't understand that. I'm not a vet, but he took it. He said, dude, I
My,
almost cried. I was like,
yeah,
really?
look, I mean, I worked with lots of people who were who are minorities and stuff, and they had a different view of how the military treated him than anything with myself. But it's like,
Oh, you're gonna get different stories, man. Some people experienced it. It was the best part of their
exactly,
lives.
right.
Some people it was like,
Uh,
man, that racist, I should never win that. So it's
well, I tell
everybody's
you this.
different, you know.
No, you're right. And your friend that had to deal with that, like that's awful. I wish he didn't, but I bet you for him though, when he went through that, that was a highly empowering thing for him too,
Oh yeah.
you know? And it's one of those things where it's like, look, just because I didn't egregiously, well, that's not true. I did not deal with race. I was not someone who was dealing with prejudice until I went to another country and I had old Japanese ladies spitting on me because I was a white dude
Because
who
you're
was an
American.
American. Exactly. So
You go
I
anywhere
dealt with
else, they
it.
hate
I go
Americans.
anywhere else. Well, it's not that. Skin tooth, man. Like, do you think Middle Easterns, like white guys who are Jewish, happen
Oh
to
no,
fight for some? Come on, let's be
no,
real. Like,
no.
I've experienced it in different levels in different countries. Not here, thankfully, thank God. And I hate that. And I'm more than willing to continue to listen and do what I can to help people who are willing to work with me to empower people that need to get the resources necessary to move on, like what you're doing. You're an educated black man in America. That shouldn't have to be something that's celebrated. That should be the norm.
Yes, yes.
Why is
And
it
like,
celebrated? It shouldn't have to be celebrated. It should be the norm.
it
You
should
and
be
your
the
wife
norm.
shouldn't have to be celebrated. Guess what you're going to do with your kids? You're going to do the same thing. You're like, this is what you got to do. Like, but it should be a little easier for them at that point. And
Yeah.
when your parents were, in the 60s and 70s, I'm sure it was crazy awful to deal with and very hard to deal with. But you have to look at it from what it is now to then. It's huge. And by the time you have kids, I hope it's at a point where it's negligible at worst to deal with. Where and it's like I feel like it's kind of getting to this reversal where I think white people are starting to feel now that, man, we're starting to get judged because we're white and because we don't have any kind of minority characteristics, that we're getting subjected to things on a college level or corporate level or any of this stuff. And it's like, really the only way to get out of this stuff in terms of typecasting, because movies do this, I mean, everything does this, we have to make it seem like that it's all right. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we shouldn't have to talk about it. Like, yes, you're black. You don't have to say that you're black. You know what I mean? And just because I know that you're black, I don't have to have these ideas that I have to make this assumption that you're probably not well-to-do, you're on welfare, typical stereotypical things, right? And when people say that here that I'm white and I'm part of a Jewish family, oh, he's rich. Doesn't matter if I am or not. He's rich, he does this, he's cheap, all these things, like, this
I mean, I get
change.
that all the time too, man. When I say I'm doing a short film and I'll be like, oh, I'm starting to, they'll be like, oh, so is it like about a cop or is it about like, and I'm like, nah, no, I'm just a dude.
I'm an artistic dude. I like doing my own thing and expressing myself through films. That's the other thing.
And it's not, let me just tell you, it's not just white people or black people. It's both. Both will just come to me and say, why don't you put a black element into this? And I'm like, so what do you mean by black element? And they'll be like, oh, there's no blackness in this. You got to put like, there's a struggle. I'm like, not everything has to be a struggle. Sometimes I could just I would just like to see a film about some black kids talking about anime or something. Like, why does it have to be, we're always like, oh, we in the hood, or, oh, we got shot, or
because that's
slavery.
Culture. That's because that's how a lot of successful
right
black people in some areas, like rappers, like that's how they're successful. They profit off that. They profit off that idea where it's like mobsters in the 40s where kids looked up to them. It's like, I want to be a mobster too. And you got to act and do a certain thing. And it's like with blacks on the cultural level, because I feel like they've kind of been marginalized on a lot of aspects, where the only way you can be respected is if you act a certain way, you're hood, you're a gangster, you got to rap like this, you got to talk like that, you got to look like this. Like,
I mean, you hear from black actors all the time. They'll be in auditions, they'll be like, make him more hood. And they're like, what? What is hood? Tell me, please.
Well,
and then if you ask that, they'll be like, oh, thank you for your time. Bye.
It's the equivalent of white people and rednecks. It's the same thing, dude. You know what I mean? Like, like hood, blacks, like you're saying, and whites with rednecks, like that's how people look at it. Like you go outside the world, like go to Japan or go to South America, they're gonna say, oh, you from America? Are you from New York City? No, kind of close. Maybe 3.5 hours away. Yeah, they don't know where
New York City is like the capital of America. When you get out of
Europeans think we talk like everyone's from Texas. We all got that Southern accent. We sound like a bunch of like
cowboys.
Kids. Yeah, I'm like the movies you've seen. Because like when it was funny. Like first time I went to France and I talked to someone who's older, he looked shocked that I was able to articulate what I was saying and the way that I was saying it. I was like, "What are you? What?" He was like, I was expecting more. I was like, cowboy yeehaw. I'm like,
nah, bro.
Are you out of your mind?
Nah, bro.
No, look, it's a breath of fresh air that you're doing this. Like, and I watch all your shorts, your short films, like, and I think it's great. And when you move on to like, more concrete, bigger things where it's like, I guess feature length is the best way to put it. And I just want more Hollywood people who are like in Jordan Peele's position to do that. Like, I really do. Like, I really like that. The movie where, I forgot the name of it, where the girl takes her boyfriend home who's white and she meets him and he meets her whole family and stuff and ends up being this whole thing.
Oh, Guess Who?
Yeah.
Burning Man. And that's that was hilarious. That was actually like a comedic remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah.
Sidney Poitier.
But the roles were reversed, though. It was
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I thought the role reversal was so good, and Ashton Kutcher and Bernie Mac, R.I.P. I thought their chemistry and seeing it from the other black perspective was funny as hell, man. I love that movie. I still watch that movie, man. That was so funny. But yeah, man, Zach, definitely got to wrap this up, man. But
yeah, man,
it was a great talk, man. We got deep into it. And I'm glad we have talks like this. I think like we don't always agree on everything, but we're still cordial. We're still cool with each other. I think
it's
people just need to have
that.
more conversations like that, period. You know,
no, so. I can't talk to you if you agree with me 100%. Like, I can't.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I look at you.
Like, what
I
the
look
heck?
side eye at you, man. I need some pushback, man. That's why we married who we married, man.
Dude, if I married just a woman version of myself, like, I would be all sorts of murdered on TV right now. Just like, oh, we want to lock this guy up for what he did to her. Like, that's what it would be.
Right. But yeah, man. All right, Zach, man. That was another good one. All right, my Nomads. Be creative. Peace.